Chapter 57 It's her. A wind comes from the south, and a flying puff enters my arms. The flower in my arms was originally a gentleman's flower. It's hard to keep company with the cheen and sepals, and the years rush us on. I'll return the favor to the one who threw me the papaya, and I'll return the agar jelly. The name of the song is The Sword of the Dragon. Hearing this very fresh witticism, a hint of laughter flickered in this girl's worried eyes. Fan Xian looked at her with a smile and said softly, "Still want to hide it inside?" The girl shook her head with a slight shyness. It was at this time that the voice of a finder came from outside. "Miss, where have you been running off to again?" The white-clothed woman's features dimmed, knowing that she had to leave. Fan Xian also knew that he must have come to look for her, and looking at her expression, a sense of loss rose in his heart for no reason, as if he was afraid that after today's separation, he would never be able to find this girl again, and asked with slight urgency, "Will you still come tomorrow?" She shook her head, her expression somewhat bleak. "Are you the family member of that nobleman in the main hall?" Fan Xian asked tentatively. This woman thought for a moment, smiled, and didn't answer him, but burrowed out of the incense case and ran out like a gust of wind, glancing back at Fan Xian before she left the temple door, and then glancing at the chicken drumstick she held in her hand, and adorably poking her tongue out, thinking that if her uncle saw this, he would surely chastise her again. With a twinkle in her eye, she ran back, handed the chicken leg to Fan Xian, then waved her hand with a smile and ran out of the temple door like this. And never came back. Fan Xian was a bit dumbfounded as he half-kneeled on the futon, confirming that what he had seen earlier was not a genie sent from heaven, looking down at the chicken leg in his hand and giggling. He made a decision in his heart that he would find this woman in Kyoto, no matter how hard he dug. If the other party has not yet promised his family. No, even if he has a marriage contract with the turbid bastard of another family, the old man will also snatch it. When he walked out of the entrance of the Temple of Celebration with a greasy chicken leg in his hand, he saw from afar that a caravan of vehicles was heading east, and he knew that the woman in white must be in that caravan. The setting sun reflected off the green trees on both sides of the road, making the leaves look like they were on fire. Fan Xian subconsciously raised his chicken leg and nibbled on it, suddenly thinking that this chicken leg was also passing by that girl's fragrant lips, and his heart burned as well. Chicken leg, ah chicken leg, to have that girl nibble on it, you are truly the happiest chicken leg in the world. He grinned and smiled as he walked towards the center of Kyoto, not in a hurry even if he couldn't find his way back to the fan mansion, and deep down he was very thankful to that child who ate the sugar gourd. And not far behind him, a blind man, whom he should really be thankful for, was holding a bamboo stick and disappearing into the twilight. Gong Dian's mood was not as good as Fan Xian's. Today, he accompanied his master out to take a break, but he didn't expect so many things to happen in the middle of the day. First, that young boy from an unknown family actually managed to get through the secret blockade of his own guards and ran into the Qing temple. Then that little girl actually slipped into the side hall under the eyes of the crowd, so he really didn't know what those old sisters were doing for a living. But he had nowhere to go to get angry, because the master's face was always gloomy and seemed to be very angry. It seemed that the encrypted epistle had something written in it that made him very unhappy. Gong Dian. The nobleman on the carriage shouted coldly. He had always disliked riding in a sedan chair, a habit he had picked up from 20 years ago. If Chen Pingping still refuses to come back, you should send a team to go and arrest him. Yes. Gong Dian led the order, but his heart was secretly grumbling, thinking who could handle this errand. Seeing that the carriage was quiet, Gong Dian secretly exhaled a breath of relief, turning back to see those drooping guards behind him, but then he was furious again. Earlier, these guards were secretly lurking outside the Celebration Temple, who knew that they were actually all fainted, and they didn't even see who did it. It was because of this that that teenager was able to so easily walk into the darkly guarded Temple of Celebration. Gong Dian's brows furrowed as he thought to himself, who could have this ability to noiselessly knock out 8 fifth-grade guards at the same time? This was simply already at the level of the 4 grandmasters. If the other party is an assassin? His heart was in awe. He didn't dare to continue to push on, but in his heart, he knew that after he went back, a secret investigation was about to unfold. At the end of the team a carriage, and other carriages are not quite the same. The windows are some very elegant flowers decorated. The girl in white who had awkwardly stared at Fan Xian in the Temple of Celebration was now half leaning on her seat, her lips smiling, seemingly still remembering something. The maid beside her saw that it was rare for the young lady to be so happy, and her mood lightened, and she asked in a joking manner, "Young lady, what good things did you meet today?" That girl smiled faintly and said, "Every time I come out with Uncle, I am quite happy. At least it is much better than staying in that gloomy room." The girl beamed and said, "But the imperial doctors said that Miss can't blow in the wind with this illness." As soon as she heard the word sick, the girl's expression became despondent and bleak, thinking of the beautiful young man she met earlier, her mood only slightly better, silently thinking in her heart, she was born with a thin life, and she didn't have many more days to live. She was able to run into that person. Should it be happy or sad? She then thought of the rumors involving herself, thought of the Fan family children, although her mother is opposed to, that strange father also seems to be opposed to, but who can argue with the uncle? When she thought of this, her heart was full of sorrow, her chest was sweet, and she hurriedly pulled a white handkerchief to cover her lips. After a few coughs, the square handkerchief has been on the point of blood. The maid saw panicked, with a crying voice said, "Vomit again, how can this be good?" The girl smiled faintly, remembering what the young man had said, and laughed softly, "What's wrong with that? If you vomit and vomit, you'll naturally get used to it." The maid, very shocked, did not understand what it means, thought that the young lady has been sick and confused. At nightfall, Fan Xian only returned to the Fan mansion in a sorry state, and he secretly resolved that in the future, he would go out and make sure to tie the Fuji Zijing around his waist. At this time, the Fan mansion had long since opened for dinner, and 4 people were waiting for him at the table. He was a little embarrassed, but Sananbo's face was expressionless, and Lu's face was also full of gentle smiles, with no hint of acrimony in sight. After he whispered a few words of explanation, Fan Ruo laughed, thinking that his brother was a bit too confused. Even if he couldn't find his own carriage, it would be good to hire a car from a car dealership. Fan Xian, however, didn't think of a carriage house at all, so he had to endure the ridicule of Fan Xi's children with a bitter smile. After dinner, the family of 4 began to play the horse hanging, and had a good time, while Fan Xi, like a bookkeeper, held an abacus and watched from the sidelines, helping everyone to calculate the amount of money. Lu's eyes flashed with a trace of sadness, but she forced herself to hold back her resentment towards her own son and smiled as she chatted with Fan Xian.